Obviously, welcome everyone. It's fantastic to see so many of you here today, and as well as those joining us via stream. The upcoming EU elections, as we know, are scheduled for June 2024, providing nearly 370 million Europeans the chance to shape the future of Europe. My name is Tuomas Lähteenmäki, and I'm pleased to moderate today's event, offering you the opportunity to pose questions to the President of the European Parliament, Roberta Metsola, regarding issues crucial, obviously, to you guys, and also the future of Europe. And today's event is part of President Metsola's tour across Europe, engaging with young people, first-time voters in EU capital cities, and the event here today at Tiedekulmassa is organized by the European Parliament office in Finland. And actually we have informed President Metsola that the audience's interest and the audience has interest in political affairs, so please direct your questions towards the upcoming elections and the future of our union. We'll begin our discussion with a short introduction from President Metsola, followed by open discussion. And as I mentioned in the beginning, if you wish to ask questions, please just raise your hand. We'll provide microphone to you guys, and you can go ahead. But if there's a lot of hands going around and you still want to input your question, you can send them via the Mentimeter just shown to you guys. However, obviously, as this is an open dialogue session, we encourage you to ask questions live here at Tiedekulmassa. But without further ado, let's begin. Please, President Metsola, take it away.
So, thank you very much. Is it ilta now? Yes. Is it ilta?
It's almost ilta.
Almost ilta. So, very nice to be here. I'm Roberta Metsola. Please call me Roberta. I am going from one country to another, sometimes in the capital city, sometimes not in the capital city, in order to try to convince as many of you, one, to vote, to be interested in politics, to be able to choose who will represent you in the next 5 years. Why is it important for you to vote? And then I will take it to a different level, that I hope that you are so interested and that you conceive politics as a force for good, that you could one day run as a candidate for the European elections. So I will start. How many of you have ever been candidates for anything? Not bad. Okay, convinced audience. How many of you have never voted before? And you will vote in June. Do you have friends who say they will not vote? How many Finnish MEPs do you have, members of the European Parliament, now? 14. You will then go to 15. I meet a lot of young people who tell me, why would I vote? European elections are not interesting for me. Whatever you decide is too complicated, is too far away. Brussels is far away. And I made it my mission as Parliament President to go from one country to another to say every decision that we take, and I am joined here by 3 members of the European Parliament. I know there was Henna Virkkunen, there's Sirpa Pietikäinen and Ville Niinistö here, who can tell you every day the decisions that we take, why it matters. Whether during the pandemic it mattered that we took decisions on health. Since the Russian invasion of Ukraine, it has mattered that we joined together on energy matters, that we have created financial structures in order to help the economies recover, that we continue to insist that there are cultural programs, that there is Erasmus. How many of you have been on Erasmus? Where have you been? Ville, you're disqualified from that. How many of you have been on Erasmus? Put your hand up again. Well, I can put my hand up too, in that case. So I can tell you that this is one of the flagship programs of the European Union, pushed very much by the European Parliament. One of the best experiences that I have had was in France when I went. I can't say I studied too much when I was there, but I learned French. And I met young people together with me who looked at Europe as something that means better rights, more equality, safety, freedom, and justice. This is what we stand for. Politics is a force for good. And this has never been more important than today. That there are those who are willing to destroy. That there are those who will try to prey on your fears. Perhaps you have a conversation at home where people tell you, you know, Europe is not like it used to be. Let's work on trying to destroy rather than to build. I stand for the complete opposite. I'm very happy also to be in Finland. As you can guess from my name, I was not born here. I am married to a Finnish guy called Roberta Metsola, a little bit of an interesting, strange name, but what can I do? Not my fault. His mother and father chose it. He comes from Helsinki. We have 4 boys together, all half Finns. We spend our summers in Lohja, on Lohjanjärvi. My kids, both of them have done the Rippileiri in Pieksämäki. So I know this country pretty well. So please feel as free and open to talk to me and ask me anything. If I don't know the answer, I'll tell you, look, I'll get back to you. Most of the time, if I can, I will give you as open and as, let's say, as easy an answer as you can give, because I'm going to ask you to leave this room, and whoever is watching us online, to leave this meeting with a mission to convince people your age to vote. You have a very open system in Finland. You can identify who your candidates are. If you vote, you hold them accountable. If you don't like what they do, you tell them. Because in 5 years' time, when they come to run again as candidates, you can tell them, I liked what you did. You can tell them, I would have liked this better if you did it like that. That's the only way to do it. Otherwise, you might get something you don't like. So, I stop here now. Ask me anything.
Thank you very much. I think we could start with, there's a lot of questions sent to our Menti website. We could maybe start with one of those, and then we can go throughout the crowd. The first question, it's displayed President Metsola on the screen there,
Roberta.
but I can read it out loud. What should be the key priorities of EU policymaking to strengthen inner cohesion of the EU in the future?
Okay. So first of all, if we look at priorities, now in terms of subjects, I would say migration, climate, security, energy, health. Big topics that I just mentioned. All of them require legislation, laws, decision, negotiation. In the European Parliament, we don't have what we call government and opposition. You have the need to create majorities. Now, those majorities, for all the topics that I mentioned, require you to be pro-European, realistic, pragmatic, good at negotiation, but ultimately know that what is being done is good for your country. So that's the content. In terms of ways to work, we could do better at explaining what we do. We could do better at asking you what you think before we do it. We could be better at costing our initiatives. And we could be better ultimately at implementing. We talk a lot about laws when we vote on them. We talk less about when they enter into force. Some countries do the job, some countries do a job a little bit less. That's the role of the parliament, but we need to be better at it. So I would say that in terms of policy subjects, we would go on, for example, on the green and digital transition. We would look at the social and economic pillars on which we need to found our union. We would make sure that we leave nobody behind, but we need to do it in a spirit of building, of constructive, of being pro-European, and ultimately winning quite a few things for each and every Finnish citizen. Now, this website is not going to exonerate you from asking questions. So at one point you have to start putting your hands up, okay?
Yep. Maybe
I was promised someone would ask me a question from there, look.
Maybe continuing from that topic, does someone want to raise their hand, ask a question? Maybe there. You can get microphone in a couple of seconds. So if you can please say your name and if you have organization, then your background also.
Hello, Well, my question is not really a follow-up question of the previous one. Well, my name is Paula. I'm actually from Barcelona, but I'm studying here in Finland. And my question was regarding the possibility of EU citizens to vote, well, either for their national MPs or the MPs of their country of residence. So currently I'm residing here, so I could vote for the Finnish MPs. But I would like to know, as the President of the European Parliament, what would you recommend foreign students or just foreign people living outside their countries, like whether they should vote for their national MPs or for the MPs of their country of residence? I mean, obviously it's a very personal decision, but...
Also the bad one. Yeah, we have been discussing for a long time the creation of a harmonized electoral law, right? And the possibility for countries or members to run on to represent different countries. In other words, the so-called transnational lists. And we actually had one experiment on this. So in France, there were some non-French who ran and now represent France in the European Parliament, or represent, of course, the European Union with their different nationalities. And that is something that is still on the agenda of the European Parliament. Until now, however, for this election, Paula, we still rely on the national electoral system. In other words, you as a EU resident in Finland can either choose to go to the Spanish embassy to vote, or you register to vote for Finnish candidates. It is a personal decision. What I would say is that if you find a candidate who represents you, then make the most of the fact that you have a choice, because many people do not have that choice. I come from a country, for example, where you cannot vote abroad. You need to physically go back, fly back to the country to vote. And I would really like in my lifetime to see that to be no longer, for that to be an option. We have also different systems. In other words, how do you qualify as a residence? We get a lot of questions that it takes a very, very long time in some countries to become a resident and therefore be eligible. You know, this is the first European election without UK citizens voting. I can tell you that for those, that is a very, very hard situation that they cannot vote for their MEPs. But ultimately, what I would suggest is that you identify with a candidate that for 5 years can represent you best. And that doesn't have to be from your own nationality.
Maybe continuing from that excellent question, maybe someone from the audience here? And state your name and organization.
Thank you. So I'm Jooni Jokiniemi from Kulosaari Upper Secondary School, Economics and Society Stream. So the EU is planning in getting new European member states from Eastern Europe and from the Balkan region. How will the EU facilitate this new membership, and will these new, maybe poor countries increase the fees for the now member states, and how will this affect Europe's agricultural policy, as now the agricultural fees are already high? Thank you.
Thank you. Shall we take another one so that we can group questions?
Yeah, there would be, yes.
Thank you. I'm a 19-year-old high schooler from Finland, and my question instead regards about voting. As we know, Finland is a very small country, such as, for example, Malta, and therefore many people in Finland think that EU elections are not important since we have only 14 MEPs and they do not vote. So my question is, what would you say to these people that think that EU elections are not important since we do not have power in the EU, and what is kind of like the benefit of having MEPs also from smaller countries in the EU? Thank you.
Okay, last one. I mean, not last
third
one, but
one.
maybe we do third rounds of 3.
Yep.
Hi, my name is Melis, and I'm a second-year European and Nordics master's student at the University of Helsinki. As you know, Finland is the happiest country in the world, but we also have some more unfortunate titles. So according to the EU Agency for Fundamental Rights, Finland is one of the most racist countries in the European Union. So my question would be how the European Parliament considers these differences among member states in their work against racism, and also your personal perspective in how the European Parliament could improve in its combat against racism. Thank you.
All right, so thank you. We start with enlargement. First of all, you know, I come from a country that joined the European Union 20 years ago. And the questions that you put are exactly the same discussion we had 20 years ago, when Poland, together with mine and another 8 countries joined. We had the same questions when Romania and Bulgaria joined in 2007. We had the same questions when Croatia joined in 2012. Well, I think, and I can safely state, and I think you will agree with me, that the fears that there were then, 2002, 2003, over this huge Big Bang enlargement, as it used to be called, did not materialize. If anything, not only did those countries become wealthier, but the European Union, because of the single market, become wealthier. I have always seen enlargement as a win-win situation for the European Union. And it's not only from an economic perspective, it's today also from a security perspective, which is what is guiding our politics and the decisions that we take on Ukraine and Moldova. We start with them. The minute Russia invaded, that was on the 24th of February 2022, we got together as a European Parliament on the 1st of March and told and made it very clear that we wanted Ukraine to become a candidate country. We said the same should be for Moldova. If you ask, then actually Western Balkans woke up and said, hey, don't forget about us. And I don't blame them, because 20 years ago the Western Balkans were also in the list of countries that could potentially join. We have a very strict enlargement system. In other words, steps need to be taken. Different countries have different paths. It took over a decade for my country to join. It took much less for yours. Different processes, but the transformational effect is amazing. Already now we can see a transformational effect, for example, in Ukraine and Moldova. I'll give you examples. We are at the moment doing a parliament to parliament, and I spoke about this to your parliament speaker this morning at Eduskunta, that we are doing committee to committee legislative approximation. In other words, making sure on the judiciary, on corruption, on agriculture, on institutional balance, on democracy, that we are side by side. If anything, it is that leveling up of those countries that we can see even before countries become members of the European Union that make us more economically solid and more secure. And the next 5 years will be crucial for this, with each and every individual Western Balkan country also being on a path, and also Georgia. Will it happen tomorrow? No. Does it take time? Yes. Will there be setbacks? Perhaps. But the one thing I'm sure, and I said this in Chisinau, so capital of Moldova, when I stood there and there were about 60 or 70,000 people, and I said, you know, if a country with over 90% of its population is looking to Europe as its home, whom are we comfortably inside to close the door shut? Now, of course, there are discussions, economics, policies. Once you grow, less countries remain beneficiaries, more become contributors. How are you going to work with a country that is agriculturally very important? At the moment, there is a situation which is with lower cost products coming from a third country into EU market, which is why, in fact, farmers across the European Union are saying, please, we need a level playing field. That we cannot have a situation where farmers, and I'm giving you an example, in the Netherlands are treated differently to farmers in Austria. Examples. We cannot have a situation where our consumers are forced to pay more simply because there are more checks on our products. And that is a real debate. And it's good to have it, because we talk a lot about the green transition. We talk about the climate emergency. It's ticking. We talk about us being the most climate ambitious continent on this planet. Essential. No choice. But when I say no one should be left behind, we cannot move from we depend on the agricultural sector to we don't depend on you at all. The green transition needs to include everyone. And I think we can manage, because that also can be coupled with economic growth. Small countries, you know, I come from a much smaller country than yours, and I'm the president of the European Parliament. We have had 3 presidents of the European Commission from Luxembourg. We are around the table, and it is not about, I mean, I'm not saying it's not important, but it's not about the strength of the size of the country, but the strength of your values, ideals, and integrity. And I don't ever think that the limits of geography should apply to the European Union. It wasn't always easy. I remember when we first joined, I was already in the system, as they say. I was a young lawyer and I felt overwhelmed. I was sitting next to the United Kingdom at the time, and I'm like, my goodness, I'm doing the job of 25 Brits. But slowly, slowly we learned. And the advantage of smaller countries actually is that we navigate quite well between larger interests and smaller interests. We understand that even if you're small, you're just as important. And that matters a lot. And in the European Parliament, I can tell you that each member, each of the 705, we will be 720 in June, they are like ambassadors for your country. Now, if you are Germany, you have 96. If you are Finland, you have 15. If you come from my country, you have 6. But if you ask me whether the European Union is better with people from the north, from the south, from the east and the west, from different parts of the political spectrum, different sizes countries, I would say absolutely. That's the beauty of the European Union. It's not about making everybody the same. If anything, we believe in, you know, such respect for different languages, different cultures, different traditions. We love that. But that also makes us stronger. That's why when we talk about the single market, we talk about competitiveness, we talk about the leadership that Finland has with your excellent products, your exports, your talent pool. You know, not bad for 5.5 million people. On intolerance, 2 things. You are very good at statistics. Every year when I see Finland being the happiest country in the world, we have a lot of laughs at home with my husband and my mother-in-law and our kids. I can see it. You have an extremely strong welfare state. You have great protection for young mothers. Gender pay gap. You are the first country besides New Zealand to give women the vote. You work a lot to make sure that there is no inequality between whether you live in Tornio. Is that the most Nordic? Tornio?
It's quite high, yeah.
Up there? Yes. I've been there, yeah. Like, let's say, Akaslompolo, you know, or whether you live in Savonlinna, keeping in mind that over there economic realities are different and social realities are different, and you need to give as much attention to them as anyone living in Espoo. On the racial diversity, intolerance is growing everywhere. I was asked, I met with many members of your parliament this morning, representing all the different political groups, and there was one common thread. Please keep an eye, and the European Parliament can do this because we've always been very strong on this, that you fight intolerance, that you fight polarization, and you fight mostly the us and them discussion. And that can mean anything. It can mean how difficult it is to be a woman in politics, how difficult it is if you come from a minority. Why should it be difficult in 2024 in Finland? It shouldn't. When we talk about the best laws on paper, when we talk about what we do to prevent intolerance offline, then let's do the same online. We're not there yet. We have a lot of roadmaps, we have a lot of anti-racism strategies, but we're still very far away. And I think we are far away because we have swept it under the carpet for a very long time. We have thought that this is not something that happens in our country, it happens elsewhere. And that has not helped. We have pushed the concept of integration far away, thinking it's not for us. Politicians, the next generation can do it. And that is something that I think we need to do much more. We have huge parts of our society that feel marginalized, isolated. Many don't vote. Many think that there is no social safety net for them. And most importantly, that when they need help of the system, the institutions, they are not treated equally. There are countries in which the situation is much, much, much worse than here. But every single situation, every single case has to be taken in its own merit. And I would encourage you also to talk to your members of European Parliament and the candidates to make sure they subscribe. We have an anti-racism and diversity intergroup. We have created our own strategies. We have extremely open debates in the European Parliament, and we point out where things are not okay. And that is important for us. Are we running out of time? You want me to stop?
Fantastic, no problem.
Yeah, I'm from the south. I talk a lot, so you need to stop me when
it's okay. Maybe we take 3 next questions.
Yeah, of course.
One from there, second from there, and third from there. And maybe on the answering part, maybe
a bit shorter.
Yeah.
No pressure.
Just a little bit.
All right.
I don't want to stand up so the people behind me can see also, but hi, my name is Karoliina Vaakanainen. I'm the co-chair of this Youth Agenda 2030 group here in Finland. We work under Prime Minister's office and the Committee on Sustainable Development, so we have a kind of a direct line to our decision makers there. However, today we took part in the committee's work in a meeting, and yet again we heard that young people, we are kind of trusted to solve future problems. Even though those problems should be solved now, policy should be implemented so that it takes into account future generations already now, preferably even yesterday, but now at least. How would you implement and facilitate better policymaking in the European Parliament or in the EU altogether that takes better into account future generations? Thank you.
Okay.
And from here?
Hi, I'm Juha Pekkanen from Kulosaari Upper Secondary School. MEPs make around €10,000 a month along with other incentives, in part so they wouldn't be tempted to take a bribe. Aren't these Qatargate corruption cases proof that this extraordinarily high salary hasn't really worked as an incentive?
And then?
Hello, Roberta. My name's Anton, and my question is about your opinions on CBDCs and how the digitalization of the euro can affect countries in the EU and the EU as a whole.
Hold on, say again. What was the acronym?
CBDCs and the digitalization of the euro.
Okay. So, Karoliina, please push for the youth check. So one of the things that young people across the European Union told us during the conference on the future of Europe is that our legislation is not youth tested. So therefore you have a lot of old white-haired people in big towers far away thinking they know better than us. There was nothing I hated more when I was younger than I would be told by politicians then my age that I was the future, you know, your time will come, don't worry, you know. I would be like, I'm standing right here. I have thoughts of my own. I would like to be able to make my own decisions. That will require decision makers to include you at each step. Make sure they do, because we are the last generation to solve climate change. We cannot wait. Our parents left it to us. That's a reality. 2, when we talk about the future, you can be able to determine what matters more to you. What are your aims? How to solve intergenerational problems of poverty, isolationism, mental health, one of the biggest things plaguing young people today, especially after the pandemic. So I would really make sure that in discussions at in those committees that you push, and you push your political parties to have young people on the voting list on the ballot paper. I ran first time when I was 24 for the European election. So 20 years ago, I ran for that first election. I knew I would not get elected, but I did it because first of all, there needed to be somebody younger than 30 on the list. I was convinced at the time there needed to be a woman. There was no other one. Later one came. And thirdly, I was the only one who knew a little bit about the European Parliament. And I had the task of going around to explain what the European Parliament was about. So I didn't get elected the first time. I didn't get elected the second time. I finally got elected the third time. As my father said, finally she made it. But that meant that I really value today how important it is to have people who are younger on the ballot list. Because an election gives you the opportunity to stand up for what you believe in and people to be able to trust you from a younger age to take decisions for them, even if they are older. Qatargate, that was the most, where are you? That was the most difficult day of my presidency. 9th December 2022. I was in Finland for itsenäisyyspäivä on the 6th. I flew to Brussels on the 7th. I flew to Malta on the 8th. And I was being asked to lift the immunity for Belgian police to enter the parliament on the basis of allegations of corruption. And I had a choice there. Either I say, okay, look, there will always be people who will break the law, or am I going to reform the system, which should have been reformed a very long time ago, and make sure that at least my successors inherit a parliament that is safer, that has more firewalls, that has the possibility to hear the alarm bell sounding a little bit earlier. So I did that. It took 10, 11 months. It wasn't easy. There is nothing, you mentioned the salaries. I can tell you it was much more difficult to convince people to introduce much more transparency on who they meet, how they spend the money, what they should not spend money on, and most of all, not to accept cash from third countries. You might think this obvious, but we needed to put in rules for that. And we're now in a situation where our rules are much stronger than in some national parliaments. And I'm hoping that in 2024 in June, the next parliament will be stronger. Again, allegations, nothing yet proven, but that was something that we needed to be, to address in order for us to be judged on our response and not on the scandal. Now, on digital. So first of all, this is about the central bank digital currency. Very few countries in the world have it, okay, including in Europe. So let's see, on the 28th of June 2023, we have a legislative package that was presented. It is currently being discussed in the committees. And the biggest issue, and Sirpa is good at this, she's a member of the Econ committee, is how we are going to complement the physical form of central bank financial structures with the digital. But I'm very clear about this, that we are far behind the United States here, far behind other continents here. And if we do not overcome the border hurdles, we will lose even more in our competitiveness to how we've been. That's it. I have to stop. Last fact I give you. In 2008, before the Lehman Brothers collapsed, the largest bank in the US was as big as the largest bank in the European Union. Today, there are 10 banks in the US larger than the largest bank in the European Union. And that's because we have not been able to adapt well enough.
There are a lot of fantastic questions here at Menti.com. Please just ask them out loud. They're fantastic. We can start from the first row, maybe a person on the middle, and from this side on the corner.
Hi, my name is Laura Berry, and I'm with the European Youth Parliament, but I'm also an international politics student. And something I've recently been thinking about is my future, and that's something I'd like to explore perhaps in the European Union. But something that I've recently seen talked about on social media by Finnish members of European Parliament is maternity leave or parental leave in general. How do you expect that we can increase youth representation among MEPs if parental leave is near impossible to take currently?
Next, any more? Yes.
Hi, my name is Elias. I'm a student here at Helsinki University in History, and also in Aalto, Information Networks. And this one is about democracy. So as we know, we have quite a year coming up this year when it comes to elections in general around the world. And for example, most of us are probably eagerly, or well, not so eagerly, waiting for the results in November or when it comes to the American elections. At the same time, it feels, even though democracy is like, we have a lot of people and a lot of nations during elections, it feels like the developments happening around the world are moving towards a change towards like more authoritarianism and like more hardline politics. So on that note, what do you think that EU's role is when it comes to upholding and exemplifying democracy on a global scale? And additionally, do you think there is some type of European way of doing democracy?
Interesting. Maybe on the last one here.
Hey, I'm Benjamin. I'm 18. I'm from the Swedish-speaking high school in Kauniainen. In the upcoming EU election, more conservative and right-wing groups are expected to do very well compared to earlier elections. What do you think about these expectations, and how do you think they will affect the European politics and especially environmental politics?
All right. So, Laura, we actually have the possibility for you to take 6 months of maternity leave at the moment in the European Parliament. We have increased the possibility for you to have parental leave. What we have not found a way around is, and this was a discussion we had a lot during the pandemic, is how to give the possibility for you to vote remotely rather than give up the possibility to vote. We haven't found a solution for that yet, and I will tell you why. First of all, we have different systems in different countries. So in some countries, you can be replaced for those 6 months. In some countries, for example, I would never be able to be replaced because if I give up my seat, I give it up forever. Secondly, the possibility to safeguard secrecy of the vote. And thirdly, because actually there are members who have told us we don't want to lose our ability to vote. We actually want to bring our baby to work. I did that with my fourth in 2017, where I was the negotiator on migration, and I said I do not want to lose the opportunity. Now, you have the possibility for you to be excused for 6 months, and that took a long time to negotiate. Because before, what would happen is that at the end of the mandate, you'd have people who would look, whether journalists or out, and see why is this female MEP in particular, or anyone who has had either for adoption, we extended to rainbow families and also surrogacy. Why would you have voted less, percentage-wise? And you'd need to explain that actually, do you know what, I had a baby, I took 6 months off, as I have a right to do it. So we've changed that, and that means you are excused and it doesn't show in your statistics. But what we have not yet managed to find a solution on is how you continue to keep your right while you're at home. And that will, how do you extend it to parental leave? How do you extend it to illness and being away? It's very complicated, but I promise that I will look at it, and I'm dealing with it with my DG personnel, in other words, for those who do human resources and IT, because we also have a very IT system that needs to be secure. Democracy. We have the so-called Jean Monnet dialogue, where we work a lot actually in Georgia, Western Balkans, any countries that want to join the EU, where we observe elections, we go there, we make sure things are done well and properly, and we make sure that we invest, even, for example, with the possibility for members of the national parliament of those countries to come to the European Parliament and see how we do it. But maybe your question was a little bit broader. Of course, the state of democracy is concerning. And the state of democracy is concerning because even though we live in a world where less people can choose their leaders than they can, but still, in the countries where leaders can be chosen, a lot of people, mostly young people, don't vote. I mentioned Brexit before. You know, Brexit, 36% of young people voted. 84% of the older generation voted. Imagine the result, maybe, if the numbers were reversed. So that is one of the biggest, let's say, challenges we have. How I need to be able to convince people outside this room, perhaps by now I've convinced you, I hope, that we have generation that has all the information at your fingertips, right? Easy compared to 20 years ago when I first ran as a candidate, but that is more skeptical, more cynical, more lonely than ever before. And that is what I hope, when we look at the United States, will not happen. It happened in some countries. It happened in France, for example. It happened in countries as we see. And this I will link to the last question with the comfort that people find to vote in the fringes. And I talk about fringes as being extreme right and extreme left. In other words, where do they join? They join in pro-Putin policy, anti-Ukraine, anti-migrant xenophobia. They are Eurosceptic. In other words, they do not want their country to stay in the European Union. But you know what? In the past few years, those numbers have decreased. So rather than preempt, and I said this in a press conference with the Prime Minister earlier today, rather than preempt the outcome of the elections in June, or even to question the voters' decision when they go to vote for whom they vote, is rather that I tell you I would like to counter the narrative from the pro-European constructive center of the political spectrum. That means that we need to identify the issues that we can work together. And that also means that if frustrations are expressed, we don't ignore them. That if our proposals are impossible to understand, we don't say that's because you don't understand, but because we didn't explain it correctly. That if we have made mistakes, we admit it. And that if we have gone too far, too fast, we balance that with the social and economic cushion that our people need in order for our legislation to be absorbed. If not, then I would not blame people to run away, either by not voting or to vote for, in a way, those who will ultimately vote against having Erasmus, Horizon, research, a better life for you on any rights. So I will not speculate on the outcome. I will fight to counter it.
Maybe continuing from that question, on the middle side here, only a few questions have risen. Person, yes, and person in front, and maybe someone from the... Yes, you.
Hi, so my name is Venla, and I turn 18 next week, so I'm voting for the first time. So how can I choose the best candidate to vote for? Because we have things to choose the candidate to vote for, but many candidates don't maybe share the same values that I do. So even though they might be the same on the paper, so how can I choose the best candidate to vote for?
Okay.
Great.
Hi, I'm Otto from KSYK. Do you believe that the EU should work towards becoming a more centralized and federation state?
Fantastic. And then person on the corner. Please raise your hand. Yeah. Yeah. A lot of good questions.
Oh,
hi, my name is Eero from Munkkiniemessä Independent Senior High School. So my question is that can the European Parliament be guarantee that the new revolutionary AI legislation will be able to keep up with the rapidly evolving and growing AI technology?
Again, slowly.
Oh, sorry.
Okay.
So can the European Parliament guarantee that the upcoming revolutionary AI legislation will be able to keep up with the rapidly growing and evolving AI technology?
Yeah. Okay. Thanks. So Vela, how do you choose the best candidate? Follow them all. It's good that you're going to vote for the first time. We have some countries where people will vote at 16. So my son, my eldest, will vote for the first time. I hope he votes for me. But I really hope he votes for me, actually. But I need to do my pitch. Also, we are working with media outlets so that after a very, very long presidential election campaign that you've had, you can now focus on the next election. What topics will be important for the next 5 years. And there are also matrices you can see who matches you best in what you believe in and what you expect from your representative. But really go on Twitter, go on Instagram. I think some of the candidates are on TikTok. Watch their interviews and ask to meet them. You know, sit with them. Say, what will you do for me and how can I be a better citizen? And let them convince you. And then hold them to account for 5 years. Make sure that they do what they promise to do for you. But don't leave that decision to someone else. And you will always find a candidate that represents you. If not, you can run as a candidate yourself. And then you can represent yourself. And you will be in that position. So, good. Also good that you're not just going to ask your parents how they vote, or, you know, grandparents. We have some countries where you vote exactly as the parents say. But good that you don't. Thanks, Vela. Otto, more federalized. You know, Europe must be, Jean-Claude Juncker used to say this, former Commission President. Europe must be big on the big things and small on the small things. I don't believe that certain things that could be done at a local level should be done at a European level. I don't believe in over-regulation. I believe that, if anything, Europe should fill that gap, which is impossible to be done at national level, which is what we found out at the pandemic, during the pandemic. We needed vaccines jointly to procure them. Otherwise, all of them would have gone to the one big country. 2, we needed, now since the war, energy diversification, to rely on neighbors, friendly neighbors, rather than others. To do that, we need an energy union. We need to have more common rules on defense. That should be done on a European level. But if you ask me whether we should replicate what your local representatives do, I very much am a big believer in local politics, because I think that being close to the people also means that you find that the politics that is closest to you should be done closest to you. So no big, you know, federations, but rather appropriate levels for all decisions to be taken. AI. I'm very proud of the decision on the legislation we have on AI. I can tell you, there were moments when I didn't think it was going to be possible. We had a very strong European Parliament position. We have still enormous challenges. One, role of law enforcement, quantum computing, manipulation of voting behavior, manipulation of voting intentions. So this is just in the election field. Academia is concerned. But this is what this legislation is about, putting forward a framework in a previously ungoverned world. Not limiting it. We do not want to lose our competitiveness, but we want to have a regulation that is actually being looked at by Canada, New Zealand, right now, the United Kingdom, in order to do the same. Each sector is looking at AI, replacement of jobs, some jobs that can never be replaced from a person's point of view, but also big adaptive challenge for all of us, especially in politics.
Fantastic. We have a couple of questions time left. Maybe from that corner. Yeah, person in the end, and maybe from that side, the person there. Yes.
Hi, I'm Nuutti Levä from the Helsingin Suomalainen Yhteiskoulu High School. And you mentioned earlier that mental health is a big problem in nowadays youth. And you also mentioned that we should follow all the candidates. And how do you think that all the youths are meant to have meant to follow the elections so strongly when we are already struggling with things such as exhaustion in our studies?
And then, please raise your hand. Yeah.
Thank you. My name is Ellen Haslahti. I'm a student in University of Helsinki, and also I represent the nuoria group, which is this new young people's nature and climate group within the Prime Minister's office here in Finland. And this is a follow-up for the climate topic, which according to a recent research by Sitra is the most significant societal objective for young people in Finland, and same can be said for young people across Europe, surely. And I want to highlight that over half of the children in the whole world are already at extreme risk due to global warming, and yet we are far from limiting temperature rise to 1.5 degrees, and which rightly represents the limit for irreversible climate system damage. And these studies also show, and I think it already was brought up, that young people are also losing hope, and this can be seen as distrust and low motivation for voting. So in your view, what would be the most relevant and effective things that EU could do to firstly rebuild this trust with the youth regarding environmental topics and show the needed ambition and leadership in climate policy making in future? And against this context, I want to ask a more concrete question, also reflecting back to the UNEA last week. How would the EU Parliament take a position towards solar radiation management or climate engineering? And how could youth perspectives be taken into account in these kind of specific areas of climate policy? Thank you.
Okay, last one, third one.
I think we can go with 2, and then we're out of time. Yeah.
So, thanks for referencing exhaustion and mental health. What I meant when I said follow each candidate is I want you to be exposed to as much information as possible. But if it's going to be difficult for you, then it is also up to us. And I'm joined here by the Office of the European Parliament here and members of the European Parliament, and I'm sure you will see debates without you having to look for them in order for you to see, to be exposed to a debate that I think is important that you are part of. We are also looking at such discussions to take place in schools, so that part of your curriculum, not extra, but part, is going to be about you having access to how you can perform your civic duty. But when we talk about mental health as a challenge and loneliness and levels of depression and suicide rates, we need much more education, much more awareness. We have a mental health strategy in the European Parliament and the European Union. We have asked actually for a year of being dedicated to mental health, and that cannot be underestimated. The situation is getting worse, not better, and it also places an additional responsibility on us as political decision makers, but also educators, in order for you to at least, perhaps if I can say what would be ideal, is that that for you politics should not be a hard job. Because the reality is that actually what we have seen is that more of our young people are looking at what is happening in the US election rather than in our own. Why? Because it's more dramatic, it's more different. And in a way, if you're interested in looking at what Joe Biden and Donald Trump are saying to each other, or Donald Trump and Nikki Haley are saying today after the election in Washington, D.C., then I think it would be good to actually say, let me see what the mayor of Helsinki has said recently, what my minister at X has said, what my MP. And if that is not automatically available to you, then it should be. So a big message to whoever is involved in order for it not to be a chore for you or hard work, but rather that you have access to information that you would like to have access to without it having to be exhausting. Elina, Sitra, I have visited Sitra actually, and it is a great organization. On climate here, the Parliament is the best partner you can have. We have been extremely ambitious. We have legislated on an unprecedented number of pieces of legislation. We have also in those pieces of legislation integrated solutions in order for us not to lose the people with us. In other words, if we're going to create, when I mentioned social and economic cushions, that means, for example, when we voted or we legislated on the Social Climate Fund, very necessary, we made sure that small businesses would not feel that they have no choice but to continue to operate outside the territory of the European Union. In terms of our targets, it starts with ourselves. We still see a gap, and thanks for giving me the statistics. even though in 2019, for young people across the European Union, not only in Finland or in the Nordic countries, climate was more prevalent. But I see that also part of the current situation and also part of the fact that we need to make sure that we do not decouple climate from the economy, making sure that you can have job creation with and the most environmentally ambitious industries and keep competitiveness here. What I would also say is the role of the European Union, and this we have tried in the carbon border adjustment mechanism, in other words, where we look at products that are imported from outside the European Union and make sure that they are not, that they, let's say, correspond with our standards and our levels and qualities. We need to do more in order to bring up the rest of the world. That the border does not stop at the European Union one. You know, I come from an island in the Mediterranean. I want to make sure that the countries in North Africa are with me on the same trajectory. But we haven't done that yet. We don't speak to our neighbors enough, and we do not come to global agreements that we should. And every year, and I will now hope for the next COP conference, that the European Union is a big leader with, that we can have our transatlantic partner there with us, the United Kingdom, African countries, and Latin America. That's our biggest challenge. Not to mention China, but that's a different discussion altogether.
Thank you very much, guys, on the awesome questions. We'll send the rest of them to Roberta after she leaves here today. Maybe, Roberta, if you would like to give parting words for our audience, particularly maybe concerning the upcoming elections.
Can you convince 10 people each for me to vote?
Maybe.
A bit less? 5? Yes, I think you can do that. Talk to your teachers, talk at home, and don't give up on politics. How many of you after this could see themselves as members of the European Parliament one day? Not bad.
Fantastic.
Bravo. Okay, on a parting note, I think mission accomplished. Thank you very much.
Yeah. Thank you, everyone, for today's question. And as mentioned, these questions will be sent to Roberta after this. And obviously, special thanks to you for joining us today. As mentioned, EU elections will be held in June 2024. In election day in Finland will be June 9th. And this event was organized here at Tiedekulmassa by the European Parliament office in Finland. Don't forget to vote. Let's take a round of applause, please, for you guys and Roberta. Thank you very much.